Apple stores are cool, but in New Zealand, you'll likely never see one without a plane ticket. Henry Cook in San Francisco. Apple's new Union Square flagship store in San Francisco, the company has developed a new visual language for its huge network of retail stores. But don't get your hopes up about an Auckland store. Analysis. In Apple's new store design, which will probably never come to New Zealand, you'll feel like the best possible version of yourself. There are no checkout counters, no queues, no energy footprint, and absolutely no sign that Apple has any plans for opening a store on our fair shores. At the San Francisco store I'm at, everyone is impeccably but casually dressed. Everything feels absurdly over-designed. Each product is positioned perfectly on the imported oak tables, lit by huge windows framed by living indoor trees. If you buy something, an employee will reach under the table and seemingly magic a receipt out of thin air, but they definitely won't magic a store into Britomart or Lambton Quay. The first floor, which has no supporting pillars and connects to just one wall, seems too impossible at first. Two-story, 13-meter-tall glass doors open up the front of the flagship store so fully that you basically feel like you're outside, right among the traffic and chatter of San Francisco's Union Square. And yes, even though San Francisco technically has a smaller population than Auckland, it still gets 3 Apple stores to Auckland's 0. I'm on this tour of Apple's new Union Square location where they are showing off their updated retail design with one another Kiwi journalist and a bunch of Australians. Of course, any Apple store is new to us. There isn't a single one of them in New Zealand, despite the fact that we buy over $700 million of Apple products a year. Apple is happy to talk about all the design work that went into this oddly inspiring monument of a building, but unsurprisingly refused to comment on whether Apple is eyeing up New Zealand for a store. I've been covering Apple for a number of years now, so this stance is rather familiar. As ever, I'm a bit of pessimist. When you think about it, the lack of stores makes plenty of sense. It's the same reason we don't have an IKEA. New Zealand is a somewhat small market at the very end of the logistical world. Getting products here is hard. Getting all the absurdly specialized materials of a new store, which includes extremely large panes of glass, Eastern European oak, helpful employees, is even harder. We're locked in by the ocean, and our cities aren't as surrounded by huge suburban populations. San Francisco may only have 800,000 residents, but the wider Bay Area has over 7 million. It's an economy of scale world, and we simply don't have the scale. Still, it's a bit jarring that cities like Wauwatosa in Wisconsin, which has population just under 50,000, around that of Invercargill, have Apple stores, even it's much easier for Apple to ship the necessary materials within the United States. After all, these stores boast the most profitable retail real estate in the world, with each square meter reportedly generating 73,214 New Zealand dollars of sales a year. Given how much Kiwis spent on Apple products last year, one assumes that number would only grow. Were we able to take our MacBooks into Genius appointments, or try iPhones out without a telco rep bothering us, or see an iPad in the flesh rather than online? Apple doesn't just use the store to sell products, it does a huge amount of on-site troubleshooting, device and photography tutorials, and general branding within their stores. In general, people regularly come in just to charge their devices or to use the Wi-Fi. Apple analyst Horst Didiu estimated in 2011 that a brand new Apple store costs around 14 million New Zealand dollars, and you can assume that price would go up given the expense of getting everything here. Still, if they are pulling in over 700 million New Zealand dollars in revenue from us, that hardly seems absurd. But then apparently, Apple actually makes very little profit in New Zealand, which is just 17.7 million New Zealand dollars in the financial year ending September 2015. This means their tax bill is rather low at just 8.9 million New Zealand dollars. This low tax bill isn't new or at all unique to Apple. As John Campbell observed of the company's 2014 returns, the company appears to be spending 97% of its revenue and costs of sale in New Zealand, which seems odd given they don't operate a single store here and have a very light corporate footprint. Apple has been accused of tax minimization in Australia too, where it operates 22 stores. Still, perhaps it wouldn't good look for a company that is apparently operating so tightly as to make a splashy new investment. Then you have to seriously ask yourself what the company, which is the largest in the world by market cap, has to gain here. We're already bigger iPhone fans than most of the world, and we have quite high smartphone penetration, and we are used to buying things online, and our population growth is quite steady. It makes much more sense to pour money into China, where the middle class expands by thousands of people a day, than New Zealand, where your sales might climb a bit faster, but will never really explode. So given the logistical constraints and our rather boring population projections, I doubt we'll see an Apple store in New Zealand before the end of this decade, if ever. Then I was surprised when Apple started releasing iPhones and other products in New Zealand on the same day as they do in all their other first-tier countries. So there is definitely hope for eager Apple fans. For now, you'll have to make do with that. Just at one corner of JB Hi-Fi. Henry Cook traveled to San Francisco courtesy of Apple.